Foucault's Pendulum is a 1988 novel by the Italian author Umberto Eco. Born in Piedmont in 1932, Eco went on to study law at the University of Turin, where in 1954, after switching disciplines, he gained a doctorate in medieval philosophy. Apart from brief spells in the media and the army, he spent his entire life in academia, most famously as a professor of semiotics at the University of Bologna. He died in 2016 at the age of 84. Foucault's pendulum is named after the pendulum devised by the French physicist Léon Foucault in 1851 to show the Earth's rotation. The novel's action takes place in the 1970s and 80s, and the plot is complex, unfolding over nearly 250,000 words. Casaubon, its first-person narrator, is a young scholar whose specialism is the Knights Templar. He becomes a reader for an occultist publishing firm managed by two of his friends and owned by an older, urbane and charming, yet shifty, intellectual called Garamond. The three friends become obsessed with a coded message brought to them by a mysterious colonel who then disappears off the face of the earth. The message appears to contain a plan for the reconstitution of the Templar Order after its suppression by the King of France in the early 14th century. It even hints at a recovery of the Holy Grail. According to most of the plot summaries that I've read, the three friends now decide to have some fun. They feed the colonel's message into a computer and they spin a conspiracy theory that's so rich and complex they almost come to believe in it themselves. Unfortunately, it leaks out, and since it's so convincing, others, specifically occultists with a murky agenda, also come to believe in it. To compound matters, they think the friends know much more than they're letting on. Which of course they don't, but those shadowy fanatics will stop at nothing to uncover what they misguidedly believe to be the truth, and now the friends' lives are in danger. Which, as I've just said, is the gist of the conventional synopsis, but I think it's misleading. Firstly, it makes Foucault's Pendulum sound like a comedy or a satire, which it isn't. It's a mistake, for example, to compare it to Robert Shea and Robert Anton's 1975 The Illuminatus trilogy. Its tone is deadly serious throughout, and it's realistic in the Flaubertian sense. Another way it's misleading is that it makes Foucault's Pendulum sound like a catch-as-if-he-can caper. Again, it isn't. If anything, it's chiefly an in-depth examination of Western esotericism. The theory worked out by the three friends isn't the mere pretext for a caper. It's so well worked out that it takes up roughly a seventh of the novel, which can feel like an info dump. The details significantly overabundant. So what's really going on? Well, Eco was a philosopher, and I think he's concerned to interrogate a particular philosophical theory of truth. There are two main contenders in the field generally. The first is called the correspondence theory, and it holds that sentences are true if the words they contain correspond to elements out there in the world. For example, the sentence "snow is white" is only true if there's a thing, snow, which possesses the particular property of whiteness. The alternative is the coherence theory, in which sentences are true if they cohere with or are somehow supported by other sentences we consider true. In this theory, truth is a kind of total field of mutually buttressing elements, which could all in principle be flipped, refreshed, or rewritten. Both theories have their problems, obviously, but I think Foucault's Pendulum is partly an examination of the coherence theory. At bottom it asks, what if we could provide an account of the fairly distant past that was internally coherent, that didn't contradict any of the wider contextualizing evidence, and which gained circumstantial support from reputable sources at all the relevant points of contact? Would that account be true? Arguably, Eco puts everything into devising such an account. In the final pages, Casaubon's partner, Leah, provides a convincing debunk of the colonel's original message, but by then it's possibly too late. The message is a ladder that can be thrown away. That's one interpretation of what's going on. A less radical one, but not unrelated, would be that Eco wants to provide as coherent an alternative history as he can, always aware that he must fail, in order to underline how radically we've forgotten the esoteric branch of Western culture, and thus provoke a remembering. Not because he was personally invested in it, he almost certainly wasn't, but simply because it's there, and as a medieval scholar he must have rued the general amnesia. At the end of the novel, Casaubon finds himself cast adrift in Paris at night, and everywhere he looks he sees the symbols, monuments, and inscriptions of the hidden tradition. They're not made up for the purposes of the book. Eco's trying to tell us something. If I'm right, then one reason Foucault's pendulum may have been misread in the past is that the author was several years ahead of his time. It's a fact that the serious scholarly study of Western esotericism didn't really get going until the 1990s. On that basis alone, I think the novel may be due a wider critical revisit.